This morning is all about ECM. So who better to talk to the topic than the speaker that I'm going to introduce to you today. We're focusing on two topics that I want to, let me just open my phone to make sure that he's going to butcher me if I don't get his CV correctly. But essentially, the two main topics that we want to focus on today is looking at the benefits of ECM in the private sector, and then later on, our CEO, Mr. Musbach, will come through and he'll speak to the intelligent digitization for your success using the ELO suite, and then we will then break out into the booths. I want to introduce this gentleman who is an information governance strategist at Core Concepts. He's got 19 years of experience as owner of Core Concepts, a consulting and training company that specializes in the enterprise content management, information governance, and records management. He helps private and public institutions and organizations to achieve compliance, efficiency, and innovation in managing their information assets using best practices and standards such as the ISO 15489 and the ISO 30301, which are more focused on content management and the data management regulations. He's a certified information professional and a certified information governance professional, as well as a Microsoft 365 certified fundamentals holder. But I think of all the achievement is his PhD in information studies from UNISA, where he's honed and written a few papers on the industry within the ECM. He says his mission is to empower organizations and individuals with knowledge and skills to leverage information as a strategic source. So the purpose of today is to tap in a little bit into the wisdom that he brings in and across his experience in the industry. And the man is none other than Mr. Paul Martin.
Good morning, everybody. Let me just make sure that everything works. It's a pleasure to be here, and my focus today is going to be very much on the industry. So I'm not looking at any specific technology. Obviously, we're here with ELO. I'm going to look at what we mean by ECM. And even as we start talking about ECM, the first comment I'm going to make is that the industry is talking about other things. So we talk about ECM or enterprise content management, but you'll hear Gartner and people like that talk about content services. And now in the standards world, we're using different terminology. And AIM, an organization who developed the term enterprise content management, now talks about intelligent information management. And as I go through this presentation, hopefully it'll make sense why that's so important. So I'll talk about the industry, and I'm going to talk about if this thing had to work for me. It's not moving. The technology, okay, we shouldn't be in the technology space. We are. So I'm going to talk about what the industry is, and try and just clarify some terms, because it's very easy to get caught up in industry hype and jargon and not really understand what it means. And very often we see tenders go out and they're asking for one thing, but when we really look at what they need, it's something different. So hopefully we'll clarify that today. And a big focus on the benefits. And I will talk a little about artificial intelligence. And that's not to say this is an AI discussion. And I also want to caution, when we look at AI, once again, to really understand what we need. And many of the things that I'm seeing in the industry now, where people are saying this is AI, we were doing in 1995. You know, the old mutual demutualization, the Sanlam demutualization, used technologies that today people are calling AI. So just be aware of some of those things. So I'm going to start off and say, I hope this is readable, and just to position a few things. And I've put knowledge management at the top. And the reason I do that is very simply just to break it into two. And the two are the tacit knowledge, the stuff sitting in people's heads, and the explicit, the knowledge that's written down somewhere. And from an ECM point of view, we're interested in the stuff that's documented, the stuff that's written down. But it's so important never to forget that if stuff doesn't get written down, it's not captured, it's lost. And that's why this bridge between the two is so important. And if there was one message I want to leave you with today, so after this next sentence, you can all go home. Thank you very much. Nice meeting you. Our business processes should be designed to capture that knowledge on a daily basis as the work happens. It's not something separate. It doesn't happen the day that somebody resigns and you try and say, well, what did you do over the last 30 years? That's far too late. So if you think content management by design, information management by design, records management by design, privacy by design, all of those things need to be built into day-to-day processes. So the whole concept of process automation is absolutely critical. And not only process automation, but process redesign, process development, to make sure that we understand what knowledge is needed, created, generated, used, shared at every stage in the process. And that's where the technology really plays its role. So I've got on the one side, I've got the tacit knowledge, and the other side, I've got the explicit knowledge or codified knowledge. And then I've got the information management. And once again, that's so important. We're starting to see organizations talk more about information management. And I'm not talking about IT. I'm talking about the information that sits on IT systems. And then underneath that, we, for years and years, have had this lovely barrier between structured information and unstructured information. Structured information, the domain of IT, the stuff sitting in databases. And we've had unstructured information, everything else. And from an enterprise content management point of view, we've always focused on the unstructured information. And whether it's paper, whether it's Word documents, whether it's PDFs, whether it's photos, whether it's videos, whatever it might be, all that other stuff is what we always called unstructured. And as we move forward, what we're starting to see is a much closer alignment between those two. And going into the future, enterprise content management, and I'll start introducing the term intelligent information management, is going to see a much closer link between those. And if any of you are involved in your privacy journey, your PAPIA journey, or data protection journey, or in Germany, the GDPR journey, you'll already know that you can't separate the two. If somebody comes to you and says, what information do you hold about me? You can't just say, well, I've got it in paper, or I just happen to have this stuff sitting in email, or I've got it in some ECM system. You've also got to know, what have we got sitting in our databases, our SAPs and our Oracles and our line of business systems. So our management of information as a strategic asset includes both. And we've got to start looking at bringing those two together. And just very interestingly, it didn't come out so much in my profile, but I do a lot of standards work. And a lot of that work is on ECM and records management. So those are the two sort of standards frameworks that we work within. And as we stand now, what are we, 2024, we are only now developing the international standard for managing data as a record. And it just shows it's been out of the domain, it's been something that the records managers don't understand. And those days are gone. We've got to now understand what we've got and manage it as a cohesive whole. So what I've got here is, if we look here, oh my goodness. This one here, all I'm really trying to show there is stuff sitting in databases, what we would call structured, unstructured, and then I've broken it into non-records and records. And forgive me if none of you are records managers, I do this for the records management fraternity, to help them understand that there's so much information that's not what nicely fits into this buttonhole, this term we call records management. And I want to emphasize today that if we don't get hold and we don't get control of documents before they become a record, we can't have authentic records. And you'll see just now when I talk about business processes, if our processes don't generate authentic, trustworthy, reliable information, we don't have authentic evidence to produce as records. If we look at it and try and position it, and I've just tried to put it into a hierarchy here, and this is starting to understand some of the terminology. And please, those of you who are going out to market or have been out to market or who want to go to market, understand what you need. And I'm highlighting that at the bottom here we've got a records management system. And maybe that's what you need. But a records management system forms part of a bigger framework of technologies called electronic document and records management systems. And that forms part of a bigger framework of technologies called enterprise content management. And that forms part of a bigger framework called intelligent information management. And if we understand that, we can start to say, well, what do we need? Do we just need a records management system, or do we need some of the bigger stuff? And when we start putting a strategy together and we start planning and we start implementing and we start moving into a digital transformation journey, we should be looking at that big picture as our future goal. We might be doing possibly just imaging for now, or document management for now, or records management for now. But our end goal should be this bigger ECM and intelligent information management world. And don't think you can do it once off. This is a journey. This is a program. It's a journey. I hope you can read this, and what I've just put together here is the starting point, which is records management. And if we look at this, on the left and right hand side are what we could call pillars of success. And we've just seen these too often, that if these things aren't in place, the systems fail. So immediately you hear, yes, systems are critical. Without the systems, you can't go electronic. But at the same time, without all of the infrastructure, without management commitment, without proper policies, without procedures, without controls in place, without the necessary permissions in place, those systems aren't going to deliver what you need. So yes, technology is absolutely essential, but the things around it are critical. So what you can see on the pillars, management commitment at all levels. Policies, procedures, processes, controls. Change management, absolutely essential. And then doing it as a project. In fact, treating this as a program where within that program we've got different projects. And each project has timelines and deliverables and resources and money and budget and people there to make it happen. And then at the top, the people. And I've seen, sadly, too many implementations where the people don't buy in. They put the system in place, but there's no people to scan. There's no people to index. There's no people to do the proper management. And of course the system's going to fail. Then the whole thing must meet your organization, the requirements, the stakeholders, the governance environment. So we've got to do some form of institutional analysis and say that our program must meet what our organization needs to do. Within that, we need to include all document and record types. So it's not just HR, it's not just finance, it's not just supply chain. It's customer information, it's supplier information, whatever the nature of your business is. And then we've got to include information in all formats. And the reality is, and I don't know whether you're technologists or not, but whether you like it or not, we have paper. All of our organizations still have paper. But at the same time, we've all been in this digital journey from long before COVID started. We've had emails. We've had people creating documents using Word and Excel and PowerPoint for years and years and years. So whether we've called it ECM or not, we've been in the ECM world for a long time. And ECM's been around for a long time. And then if we go down below that, we start to look at classification. And I'm not here to throw lots of jargon at you. But at the end of the day, we need to understand our data. We need to have the ability to be able to say, I'm searching for a certain type of information. I need to find the right information. I need to find the right version of that information. And I need to trust that what I'm finding and retrieving and using is the latest, accurate, authentic, authoritative version of the truth. Because if we were using the wrong information, it's worthless. And as you can see, I'm old. I've been around a long time. But I remember a quote that came out, I think it was from the Meta Group, probably about 30 years ago. And they say, if you don't get this under control, 40% of your staff will be spending their time on non-value-added, document-related tasks. 40% of your staff members' time. They're talking about knowledge workers. And if you think of that as a cost to company and a waste, it just makes no sense not to do this, not to do it properly. So that's the classification side, and part of that is understanding what you're allowed to do electronically, what the law says about what you're allowed to do electronically, developing rules around those, what your retention periods are. And many organizations have taken retention seriously. They kept everything forever. What they've never done was taken disposal seriously. And it's just too expensive nowadays not to destroy. And it's also in contravention of the privacy laws. So if you're keeping everything forever, you're probably breaking the GDPR regulation, you're probably breaking POPIA, because the law says you gather it for a purpose, you use it for a purpose, and when that purpose is finished, you destroy it. But it makes good business sense to put in place retention periods. Another part of classification is information sensitivity or security classes. What's confidential? What's public access? What's secret? What should be made available? What's intellectual property that needs to be protected? And if we don't understand that stuff, and if we don't put the rules in place to protect it, chances are we're going to fall foul either of the law or we're going to lose information that we do need to protect. So after classification, we've got storage. So we need to make decisions. Where are we going to store it? Are we storing the paper? Are we storing it electronically? If we're scanning it, what do we do with the paper after scanning? Are we going to keep it? Or are we going to destroy it? Once again, what are those rules? If it's stored electronically, are we going to store it in the cloud? Are we storing it on our own servers? What formats and what mediums are we storing? And then again, things like backup and disaster recovery come into that. And then we look at decongestion, and this comes back to that retention and disposal. We don't destroy enough. And I'm not saying go out and throw away all your information, because this is an asset. It's absolutely vital. But when I walk into organizations and I do an assessment or an inventory, on average, I find that 60% of the information that you're keeping is a duplicate. And that's madness. Because not only is it a duplicate, and that's costing, but your backups are taking twice as long as they should. Your disaster recovery is costing twice what it should. So get rid of the rubbish And I'm not saying get rid of the good stuff, but why are we spending so much time and management effort on keeping things that we no longer need? And if we don't have value, if those records or that information doesn't have value, don't keep it. And this is where having an ECM system, a platform where we can manage it, where we can get rid of duplicates, where we know that we're using the single trusted version of the truth, is absolutely essential. Because part of the duplication comes in that some sitting in email, some sitting on my local hard drive, some sitting in OneDrive, some sitting in Teams, some sitting in SharePoint, some sitting in my ERP system, some sitting in ELO. You've got to start rationalizing that and bringing it together. And then we've got the systems. And hopefully you can see that the system is just a part of this bigger framework. The system by itself has no value. Done properly, the system is absolutely essential and provides massive value. And then at the bottom, we need the infrastructure. Because if you've got the best system in the world, but you're running on very, very bad network lines, or you don't have infrastructure, power backup, so that the system's down, then it's useless. So the infrastructure and then your backup disaster recovery, absolutely essential. So if we build on that from a records point of view, and all I want to highlight with this slide is, right at the end we've got the archival stuff, the stuff that we're keeping either permanently or for long periods of time, but very seldom retrieved. But going into that are our records. And if we don't have authentic records, we can't have authentic archives. And then I go into the document side, and if we don't create documents properly, using proper templates and standard formats and proper version control, so that we can trust that those documents which become records are authentic, what's the point? We're storing things which are worthless. And then I go back to what I touched on earlier. We've got to start looking at the business processes, so that if a user in their day-to-day creates documents using the right templates, using the right metadata or index fields, storing it in the right place, in the right format, with the right permissions, without having to think like a records manager or an IT specialist, we design our business processes to enable everything else. We talk about governance and compliance. We don't want every user to think like a records manager. We don't want them to think about retention. We don't want them to have to think about information sensitivity classes. They must just know that in my day-to-day job, I take this, I do this with it, and I store it there. Whether there's a back-end process behind it, some workflow behind it, doesn't really matter. As long as they store it in the right place, let the systems manage everything. That's our job from an ECM point of view. What I'm highlighting here is if we understand the different formats and the different nature and the different locations where and how information comes into organization, and we can start building rules around them to say, if this is one of these, it needs to go here. It needs to be managed like this. These rules and these workflows apply to it. Then we've got control. And some of those decisions are, who's responsible to create it? Who's responsible to store it? Where should it be stored? Should it be stored in paper? Should it be stored in electronic? Who's responsible to scan it? I'm not going to ask the question whether you use multifunction devices for scanning. I'm not going to ask the question, do you scan to email? Because I know the answer already in most organizations. All I want to highlight is if you scan to email and those emails go into user computers and those users have the ability to edit those documents, you can't trust them. I hope that makes sense without me going into any more detail. I can edit PDFs. I can do it in 3 or 4 different ways. So what you've got to try and do is you've got to look at wherever you capture information. And this multi-channel capture is becoming a big issue because we do get information on phones, we get information on tablets, We get stuff coming in by mails, via web forms, via the mail room. That's just the reality. So we've got to start getting control of that information as early as possible and applying the rules to it. I mentioned AIM. AIM used to stand for the Association of Image and Information Management. Then it just stood for AIM. It wasn't an acronym anymore. And now it's the Association for Intelligent Information Management. And whilst that sounds like semantics, you'll see in a moment that it's very interesting, and there's a good reason for that. The reason I show this model is AIM invented the term enterprise content management way back in the 90s. So it's been around a long time. This is nothing new. And in those days, AIM came up with 5 main areas. I'm not going to go into the detail, but those areas were the capture environment, what information are we getting in, how are we getting it in, how do we capture it, the store environment, where does it get stored, the preservation environment, so if we do need to keep things for long periods of time, how do we preserve it, the manage environment in the middle, so workflows, records management, business process management, and then delivery output management. And those are still important. Those haven't gone away. So this framework from an ECM point of view still applies. And it's still absolutely valid. And as I say, in each one of these areas, there's questions around classification, there's questions around indexing, there's questions around do you outsource it or do you do it in-house, there's questions around backscanning. I'm not going to go into all of that detail. But what I want to highlight is AIM, who invented ECM, now talk about intelligent information management. So that's the real buzzword here. And what I want to highlight is all of those things, those 5 areas are still here, but there's a few things that are extra. And those are things that I believe are starting to become really important these days. So the capture world, still very much there. So still very much there. Multi-channel capture, I've touched on. Collaboration, I'm sure you've all used Teams or other frameworks. Absolutely critical. Sharing, working together with information, reducing duplication, working on a single version of the truth and not having everybody keeping their own copies of it is becoming more and more important. Document management, version control. Check-in, check-out, co-authoring in today's environment. Migration, integration. So even if you've got ELO, what about the stuff that's sitting in Teams? What about the stuff that's sitting in Exchange? What about the stuff that might be sitting in SharePoint? What about the stuff sitting in your ERP systems? How do we bring that all together? It's becoming absolutely essential. And especially with data protection or privacy, we need to manage information as a cohesive whole. It's one of the key messages that's coming through. Then we can look at digitalizing, digital transformation, information-intensive processes. And I think that's important. So if you've got processes, I mentioned Old Mutual and Sanlam with their demutualization processes, high volumes, tens of millions of documents scanned in 3 months, very short periods of time, high intensive, high information intensive, high volume processes. Business analysis wasn't something that used to really sit in the AIM framework. And I think it's everything. If you don't understand your business, if you don't understand the processes, how on earth do you automate them? So this analysis is just fundamental to everything we do going forward. Business process management, and whether you call it process automation or workflow or BPM or business process reengineering, you have to understand your processes, and you have to take a look at your process and say, well, if we're moving to this electronic world, let's use it as an opportunity to reinvent those processes, to improve the processes, to prevent duplication, to make access easily available to the people who need it when they need it, to streamline and improve processes. So as I'm going through some of these concepts, you can start to see some of the benefits coming through. Robotic process automation. Ooh, isn't it just such a lovely term? And yet it's key. And I've just seen so many times over the years, and even recently, any time that somebody is taking a document, whether it's a paper document or an electronic document, moving it from here to there, or copying and pasting something from there to there, that's an opportunity for robotic process automation. Things that don't add value, things are repetitive, they're the same things happening again and again and again. And there's no analysis, there's no thinking, there's no human intelligence applied to it. We should be looking for process or robotic automation. Case management, and I'm not just talking about legal cases here. Could be employee files, could be disciplinary files, could be legal files, could be customer files, RFPs, tenders, becoming much more important. Governance and compliance, sadly, that's a world that I'm in. Everybody hates governance and compliance, but it's a reality. And whether we like it or not, we have to comply. And wouldn't it be such a pleasure if you didn't have to think about compliance? If all you knew is everybody stored things in the right place and behind the scenes the governance and compliance got applied. That's part of our goal. And you can automate it. You can do a lot of it automatically now. So there's information governance. I'm going to tell you a story now which is hopefully going to make you smile. I invented the term information governance. Okay. If that sounds like a strange statement to make, back in 2006, when I developed my company, I created this term called business information governance. And funnily enough, I was sitting in Berlin in 2008 with my colleagues from ISO, and I said, you're going to hear this term called business information governance. And sadly, it just became information governance. And I then wrote the first Wikipedia definition of information governance, because it didn't exist. And the reason I tell you this story is to tell you that you can't trust Wikipedia. Because I made it up. I sat there and I said, oh, I like this idea. It doesn't exist. And in 10 minutes, I wrote the worldwide first definition of information governance. I made it up. And that's how these things get created. So when we have buzzwords and jargon, and Gartner talks about content services and whatever the term is, somebody made it up. So don't trust Wikipedia. But information governance is becoming very important. Records management, very important, public and private sector. Privacy, I don't think I need to explain. Digital preservation. If you've got information that you need to keep for long periods of time and it's in digital formats, you've got to make sure it's readable, usable, accessible into the future. And if you and your organizations have got floppy disks or stiffy disks or CDs or DVDs or Blu-ray devices or worm devices or some other magnetic media on tape, if you've got little DAT tapes, if your board meetings from 30 years ago are sitting on those little tapes, chances are you don't have the technology to read them, even today. So we've got to include preservation into our thinking going forward. And then this wasn't so much part of the original AIM thinking, and it's becoming everything now. Taking that information and extracting value from it. And this is not just OCR or ICR. What we're doing is we're saying, what is the information? How do we use it? How do we classify it and structure it and look at it from different facets and different views? How do we then interpret it and manage it to provide value to allow us as an organization to outbeat the competition? So metadata, very important. Extraction, recognition, it's been around a long time. It's getting better, but critical. Analytics, absolutely essential. And then search. If we look at search and metadata, they seem to be on opposite ends of the spectrum. Search says, put in a Google type search and find anything. Go into Copilot or some AI tool and ChatGPT and let it find information for you. But can you trust it? I don't know. So a combination between search and classification, I believe, is the way to go. And I'm not going to talk too much about this process, but I really want to highlight two things. I've just made this up as a strategic process, as our thinking. And right at the top, I've said, what are the typical strategic drivers of an organization? So if I look at any organization, you're going to find you want to be the best in your field. You want to attract, retain the best employees. You want to be fast. You want to be cost efficient. You want to have very efficient processes. But you also want to be compliant. Does that sound like any one of your organizations? You want to have the best customer service that's out there. That's what organizations do. And if we start with that, so forget ECM. Okay, I'm not here to talk about ECM. If we start with what are the drivers of the organization, and we say, how do we achieve it? And how can ECM and the parts of ECM help us to get there? Then we can win. And that leads into change management, because our change messages all get written around showing people how we can achieve those goals. So when we talk to HR, we're saying, hey, HR, you want to attract and retain the best employees. Do you want them spending their time on duplicate information, on outdated information? I'm sure you don't. So make it easy for your staff to do their jobs, to find the information they need. Do you want to have valuable information that you can treat as an asset that's got insight that allows you to make correct decisions? ECM can assist with that. Do you want to be cost effective? Streamline your processes. ECM assists with that. But it starts up there. It doesn't start here. And you'll notice what I've done is I've broken it into some components. And I haven't tried to put everything in there. But managing the paper you've got is critical. Managing scanned images is important. Managing electronic documents is important. Records management is important. Business process management or workflow. And the key message with this slide is if you understand your corporate drivers and you understand what technologies are going to help you get there, you stand a strong chance of success. And this slide is saying ECM is not one big amorphous blob. It's a bunch of different technologies that together can help you get to where you need to get. So let's look at some of the benefits. And I just wanted to highlight here, so sorry for all of us, but ECM comes at a cost. Okay, if anybody thinks there's no cost to implementing ECM, I'm sorry, you're ringing the wrong audience. But the benefits outweigh the cost. Let's not shy away from the cost. Let's recognize them. But let's understand the benefits. And not all those benefits are quantifiable. So how do you quantify being compliant to POPIA? Maybe you can put a risk value to it, but you're making it up. But let's not shy away from the cost. So I started off saying, well, if we don't have ECM, what are some of the challenges? Firstly, and you'll start to see I've touched on some of these already, just inefficiencies. It's just too inefficient these days not to have some form of automation. Too many paper processes. And I think we all know the inefficiencies that come with paper. Somebody's not at their office, and that paper sits on their desk for a week while they're on leave. Paper gets lost. People, and I'm sure some of you are still in this situation, somebody creates a document, they print it, they sign it, they send it to the next person who signs it and scans it, and pass it on to the next person who signs it and scans it. You pass it on to the next person who signs it and scans it. Which one's the record? Which one is the one to be kept? Those are the sort of things we've got to look to overcome. Incorrect and inefficient data entry. We can automate data entry. We can make it faster and we can make it more accurate. We can use electronic forms. We can get customers, suppliers, employees to fill the data in themselves. We can spend our time on data validation rather than data capture. We can use validation against our existing databases, our existing CRM systems to make sure that that data is accurate. And if we look at data protection or POPIA, that says information must be accurate and kept up to date and kept accurate. Let's use our tools, the things that we've got, to assist. And lost documents, I think I've spoken enough about. And we can no longer afford, if we want to be competitive, we can no longer afford to work at the speed of paper. It's just a reality now. And some thoughts from AIM. The reality is organizations still are doing stuff manually. And this is recent, this is 2024 research. Many organizations, 51% of people say they still have too many manual processes. Let's move beyond that. 59% manual data entry, major problems. 32% non-digitized processes. So this is global. The reality is organizations are digitizing, they are going electronic, they are automating. Let's move ahead. And just as maybe a boost of confidence, in 1999, we were asked by Old Mutual to do a world tour with them to look at some of the major ECM products in the world and how they were being used. And when they came back, they said, you know what we saw? We saw that everybody out there was doing the same things, and we in South Africa were actually ahead of them. So admittedly, Old Mutual, a large global organization, but in South Africa we do use technology often, at least as effectively, and sometimes more effectively than our international counterparts. So let's keep that up. So further benefits, treating information as an asset. And it is. It's probably our most important asset. It's probably the most valuable asset. And yet we look at companies where they look at their cars and their buildings and their tables and chairs as assets, but they don't treat information as an asset. And even in some of the ISO standards, mentioned 15489, 3301, this concept of information as an asset is becoming mainstream technology. But some other things, enabling innovation. And what I like about that is if everything's in place, if it's trustable, if it's stored in the right place, if it's available to the right people at the right time, we can then leverage it. But if we're spending all our time searching for, trying to find information, ensuring we're working on the latest version but not being quite sure and redoing work, how do we spend our time innovating? So let's get the basics in place. Let's get the systems in place to allow us to innovate. Better customer experiences. I've had great customer experiences where organizations use ECM, and I've had shocking customer experiences. And I'm sure you've all had the same thing, where just things do not work. And you walk in, you phone a customer service representative, and they have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. And yet those who've got the platforms in place, you phone them and they say, oh, certainly, Mr. Mullen. There's your customer. Ah, so you've got this document and this document. This. Yeah, here we are. Can I send it to you? Fantastic. That's what ECM does for us. And then faster, nimble, easier, quicker, less expensive processes. This is an interesting one. The next generation of employees. And I don't know if any of you are under 30, and if you are, I'm not going to talk to you. We always talk about change management, and we talk about the older generation being resistant to change. But we've also got to think about the younger generation. And sorry, for those of you who are under 30, don't shoot me. But what we're finding is the younger generation don't like rigid process. They want to do things their way. They want everything to be, they want the end result without having to go through the steps to get there. And we've got to put the systems in place to cater for the new generation, because they want change. They want things to be fast and quick and easy. And our ECM journey helps support that. I've spoken enough about wasting time. Let's give our employees the information they need to do their jobs. Minimize risks. Privacy, data protection, POPIA. If you can't find the information, that you need when you need it, or that information is not protected and it gets exposed or stolen, you're in trouble. If we look at GDPR and 4% of global turnover as a possible fine, if we look at, I was talking to someone this morning about the mines and the class action suits at the moment around asbestosis and silicosis. Management of that information is going to cost them billions of dollars if they don't get it right. Already it's costing them billions of dollars. So regardless of your industry, you've got to reduce risk. And then, just as another stat, the vast majority of organizations are seeing the benefit of going electronic. And here we're talking digital transformation, which is really ECM, significantly outweighs the cost. I've touched on automating governance and compliance. It's just too difficult to do it manually. We just have too much information to do it manually. It's just that simple. So we've got to get it under control, and ECM is really the way to do it. I tried to be polite here and put a question mark after saying you can't comply to POPIA or GDPR without ECM. And it's only very slightly tongue-in-cheek, because I really do believe that if you don't have an ECM system, your cost of discovery, your cost of searching for and finding and ensuring you've got all of it, being able to present it, is just too expensive not to have an ECM system in place, not to have one single source of the evidence of the truth. Also, without ECM, how do you destroy when the purpose is finished? It's almost impossible. How do you make sure that you're destroying all the versions? I'm not going to go into this, but 1 million documents, I think I've got 1 million documents just in my OneDrive, but 1 million documents, if you had to open up each document, so go to people's drives, hard drives, file servers, and take just 15 seconds to analyze those documents and find out what they were about, it would take you more than 2 years. POPIA gives you 30 days. It's just, we just can't do it manually anymore. How am I doing for time? Am I still okay? 5 minutes? Okay. So what I'm going to end with is, this is not designed to be an AI presentation, but I have just put some thoughts in here around AI. So I could end the presentation here, but I'll go through some of these quite quickly. And really what I'm saying is, we have the tools. And even things like character recognition, whether it's optical character recognition, recognizing text, recognizing handwriting, making sense of it, auto-classification. The tools exist. And whilst we bundle them all under AI, they've been around for a long time. And most of these, funnily enough, are 30 years old. But people are seeing them as part of this AI. And yes, they've got better. So I've just looked at forms recognition. If you've got high volume forms, really look at forms recognition. Within those forms, look at what's typed. Look at what's handwritten. Look at opportunities. Give them populatable PDFs. Give people web forms to complete. Make your own lives simpler. Extract it, use barcode recognition, use optical mark recognition. When I spoke about analytics, this really talks to two things. It talks to auto-classification and it talks to analytics. And what it's showing you is that in a document, so let's take a contract for example. If I look at a contract, typically we would sign that contract, we'd store it in a place called contracts, or whatever it might be. But that contract could relate to a project. But it could also be a contract about a building. It could also be something that relates to a specific country or region or town. There might be certain people in that contract. And now, with the ability to, and what we're doing here is we're saying, turning unstructured information, a document, into structured information. So we now have the content, and we can then classify and manipulate and analyze a lot of it electronically, automatically, to then have different views or different facets of the same information. I hope that makes sense. We can look at it and we can say, I want to see all the contracts relating to ECM, or I want to see all the contracts relating to this supplier who we've been dealing with for the past 20 years. And some of those might be about ECM, some might be policy development, some might be training. So that they might well historically have been stored in different places. Now we can have access to and search for and find them from one place. Very, very powerful. E-discovery, searching for, finding, retrieving the information in a way we need it as fast as humanly possible to use either in court cases or in privacy or other discovery needs. Archives, being able to identify what we've got, being able to automatically apply retention periods, being able to bring them up and say, these are the records that are now due to expire in the next 3 months. And let's pass them automatically through some workflow process. Send them for review. Do it automatically. Don't expect your users to be records managers. I've included in here, I'm not going to talk about it much, but some digital preservation concepts. Go out, use AI to understand what are the latest formats that are out there. Which formats do we have in our organization which might be at risk? Like those DAT tapes that we may no longer be able to read going into the future. So just some examples, but lots of things we can do. Robotic process automation, just to reiterate, if you're doing things using humans that don't require thought, you shouldn't be doing it. Okay, I know we do it, and I know there's people implications, and I know there's possibly union implications. Let's not use this to just toss out all our staff. We're not suggesting that for a moment. But if your staff are spending their whole days doing stuff that requires no thought, we can use them better. That's the whole concept of robotic process automation. And then classification, auto-classification. I'm not a total fan of it. I think we still need validation, but it's getting so good. And if you've got the ability to use auto-classification in conjunction with things like database lookups, with automatic verification or validation, we've got 99% of the way there. And then you've got staff spending 1% of their time validating rather than 100% of their time typing stuff in. So becoming very important. I'll leave that one. All I'm saying with this slide is this is a journey, and it might just start off with scanning, but we should also be looking at things like templates and proper document creation, version control, managing born digital documents. And part of this is electronic signatures. And the law does say we can sign things electronically. And our ECT Act is over 20 years old. 20 years ago, we said you can do things electronically. And yet still every day I get people saying, can we do it electronically or not? You can. Now here, maybe I should end with this. You can do it electronically as long as you do it properly. Okay, if I had to paraphrase the ECT Act, that's what it says. You can do it electronically as long as you do it properly. And to do it properly, you need an ECM system. I hope that really just sort of summarizes it. So ECM is not just about the technology, it's not just about scanning, it's not just about records management. It's a strategic weapon that you can use to improve your business and get the lead on your competitors. So I don't know how much time we have for questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Another hand for Paul Mullen, please. At this point, if there are any questions or comments, I would like to take a few before I release him to the seat.
I didn't get much on what is important these days on cybersecurity, because information systems right now are the main target for attacks, because once you get hold of someone's information, you can actually extort any amount of money. So I did not get much on the system's web application security. I know you might say that your infrastructure is supposed to cover that, but what are the efforts, or what are what is the security governance in place? I heard so much about information governance, but not on security. And then secondly, it's on integration, because I would like to think ECM is the end of every workflow process. So we also did not get that on the integration part, to say how then does it finally get this information, process it to archiving it, from which systems, and its capabilities on integration with most of the collaboration or work tools, modern workflow tools that we have these days. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may talk to that before other questions, sir. And you're absolutely right. So obviously we could spend a week standing talking about these things. Information security is absolutely essential. And regardless whether it's software as a service, whether it's on premises, somebody's trying to get your data. So from an information governance point of view, and not only cyber security, but information security, absolutely essential, even of paper. So security is fundamental to everything. And one of the things with ECM and reducing duplication, the fewer systems you've got, the more you can apply the controls to those systems. And unfortunately, what we have at the moment is we have stuff sitting on, sitting on shared drives, sitting on local drives, people taking their laptops home, sitting on Teams, sitting on Exchange, in Outlook, maybe on SharePoint, in multiple ECM systems. I've done work with organizations where I found 32 ECM systems in a large corporate, and I'm not exaggerating. And so what we've got to do is, as much as we can rationalize it, the easier our security job becomes. And we've got to make sure that obviously permissions, controls, the system must handle that security. But it goes beyond that. It goes to password protection. It goes to biometrics. So we've got to apply whatever systems controls we can, permissions, who can access what. It's a whole, I think we could spend a week on it, but I love the question because it's absolutely critical. And it's one of the reasons why ECM is so important. Far easier to apply those controls to a single ECM system that's a robust global environment to many different systems which are uncontrolled. And that was always the problem with the unstructured stuff. It was scattered everywhere and it wasn't controlled tightly. So ECM really supports and enables the information security. The other one on, sorry, and the second part of the question was on?
Integration.
Integration. Most of the ECM platforms now have robust APIs, as do most of the ERP systems. Why I think it's such an important question is when we've always spoken about ECM, and when ECM came about, we always advocated a single repository. The reality is now that you might have more than one repository. And part of our decision is to, so when I showed that strategy and I had the different pockets of technology, you might decide that your ERP system is the best place to store images. For example, I don't know, and I'm not trying to make it up. But underneath that, you've got your ECM system for everything else. Or you could decide that because it's the invoices, the proof delivery are so closely related to the transaction that the only time you're going to need them is from ERP. But then you've got your ERP licenses to take into account. So a good starting point and a decision to be made is, let's just say ECM first, like people are talking about cloud first and things, ECM first, but if there's and when I say ECM, say ELO is a single platform first, if there's a need and it makes sense that it sits only in a system because only those people in that system are ever going to access it, then maybe there's a need for more than one repository. And that's why Gartner came up with the content services thinking, was to say that maybe there's multiple repositories, and the reality is you might have multiple repositories. But integration, absolutely essential. Even from a authentication using Active Directory or something like that, from a validation or verification point of view, database lookups. So your integration is key. You really have to be able to integrate, but you also have to make that decision. Single platform, multiple platforms, but preferably single platform first, and then deviate from that as and where and only if it makes sense. I hope that answered, but integration is absolutely key.
Thank you, Paul. In the interest of time, if we have just maybe one more question. Saka?
Thanks. Let me appreciate the presentation as well. I think it goes a long road in making us understand a little bit more. What's your take on legislation on these platforms? You've got the likes of PAIA Archives Act. I mean, if I had to write a PAIA request for information to some of the institutions here, people will take a while to even figure out what is this thing. So would you think you include some of the legislative requirements as part of the design? Because, as you say, some of the information needs to be destroyed after a certain period of time, and the Archives Act is quite clear on certain things. Now I give you a PAIA request for information, and you give me some of the information where by law you are supposed to have deleted. So I'm trying to find, because some of these still sits in people's minds, people's heads, in particular when it comes to legislation. The system doesn't know. I just thought, let me get a sense of what do you think about that? Thanks.
I take it you're from government? Can I answer it before they don't? So the answer is, when I showed that records management framework, the top line underneath the skills and staffing infrastructure was the regulatory or the environment in which you operate. So clearly you've got to take that, and it's not just PAIA and POPIA or National Archives or Provincial Archives. There's PFMA, MFMA, whatever it might be. There's PAJA. And then in the private sector, the Companies Act, the Income Tax Act, the VAT Act, Occupational Health and Safety, if you're in education, so you've got to take those laws into account. And once again, the ECM systems support that. I'm going to make just one last comment on this for those of you who are in government. Firstly, National Archives does not dictate retention periods. National Archives will only tell you which records you need to keep permanently. You need to determine your own retention periods. The second thing is that the National Archives Act is currently under review, and they're changing it because there are some significant challenges in the various National Archives documents. But also, they've always said you need to comply with, your system needs to comply with either the US DoD, don't worry about the technicalities here, the US DoD 50152 specification, or a thing called MOREC, or ISO 16175. And the Americans have dropped the 50152 standard. So it's going to be very interesting to see how National Archives handle that, because globally it's no longer applicable. So I do sense some changes. And what's happened is the American Department of Defense, and I love what they've done now, is they've rather focused on what are the outputs from the system. Are the outputs from the system authentic, trustworthy, reliable, with integrity? Can you prove that they are what they should be? Are they complete and whole? And that should be the focus, and that's what the focus now is. Rather than saying, this system should have this functionality. And I'm hoping that National Archives are going to move in that direction too. But to answer your question, yes, we need to comply with the laws. And I believe that ECM is one of the best tools we have to allow us to comply. Hope that answered it.
Thank you very much, Paul, for that insightful presentation. So in the interest of time, we're going to move on to the next topic. I want to quickly just introduce Kevin. Kevin is the CEO of the ELO Africa business, and he's going to take us through the next part of this session with respect to how ELO and as an ECM tool, and also introduce our global CE, Mr. Mosbach, to the floor when he's finished. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I won't use a lot of time because I will want to allow our founder to take you through what we want to offer to you. But I want to answer the question he asked. When it comes to security, we at ELO, we separate between three different types of security. We have the infrastructure security, that is your environment. Then we have the system security, let's say access to the system. And then the last is the document, securing the documents that are stored in this system. As you see, we cover the three type of security, and on the document, we have a firewall on the document side. On top of it, we have also the encrypting of your information if you want to do so. And those three security make our solution or our platform extremely secured, that even if you have had an attack, that your data will still be kept safe. That is the first thing I wanted to emphasize on. The second thing is the integration. We at ELO have a vision. The vision is that information, as Paul was saying, is an asset. And information is not created in one area. Information can come from different angles, like your ERP system or whatever. Our focus is to make sure that you make usage of each of your information, no matter where they are and what is the source. And we can integrate to all systems you may imagine or you may have in your environment. That is the assurance I wanted to give you for those 2 points. But if you want to go a bit deeper, we are here, as Chuani said, is an information day. We are willing to go in communication with you. But because we don't want to let you sit there for long, I will use this time to introduce our founder and group CEO, Mr. Hans Karl Mosbach.
Thank you from my side. It's a pleasure for me to stay here by you. And in the next minutes, I will take you on my aeroplane and will give you some information. What is our understanding from intelligent information management? And I will give you also, or try to give you an overview how our customer work with ELO in this process, the digitalization and the digital transfer, and use our technology for work more efficient in the future. Yeah, a short view of our company structure. See that we are working worldwide, not only here in Africa, also in Asia. We have subsidiaries in Australia, but also in America, for example, US, on now also in South America and Brazil and Chile and so on. Yeah, when we're looking for our customers, and we have a lot of large, very, really large customers in all sectors. For example, in the energy sector, we have a lot of large energy concerns in Europe, for example, E.ON or EMBV. And here in South Africa, we have also Eskom. Then our new customer, and we will help that the service from the ESCOM would be in the future better, that we have not so a lot low shedding. Yes, it would be also a target for us, that we have better processes by ESCOM and that we have better services and services especially for the infrastructure, that the infrastructure worked. So that's one point. Or a new customer is also the mine ID, is a mining company in Indonesia, worldwide, a very, very large mining company in the energy sector. Administration. So successful processes in the administration is very important for a country in all sectors, in the education, in the hospital sector, and. And we have a lot of large customers, for example, in the Switzerland, we have nearly all big cities who work with ELO in all process and records management. You see in the video that the police in Switzerland also work with the ELO in the daily process. And we have very, very sensitive administrations in the country, and that it's also important in this case that we have a high security level, how Kevin before told. And one of a new customer what we also have, and they work very intensive now with our solution, is the Vatican in Roma. So we managed, for example, videos also with AI, so that they could search per click what have the Pope say, for example, for 2 years in a TV interview. We could find this interview very fast in the sequence from the Pope we have in some seconds available. So it's only some administration. Other customers is, for example, in the construction area, we have Wilfinger and Berger Apleona, very, very big construction companies who work in their business. And another sector is, for example, the banks and the insurance companies. We have, for example, here in Nigeria, the Access Bank, and our new customer now, but we have a lot of banks worldwide, the Raiffeisen Bank in Europe, for example, or Indonesian banks, Mandiri Bank, and. And we work in all places. They work with the ELO system also on the counter. When you're coming in the bank and the people behind work with ELO on the counter with our solutions and the processes. Okay, we are working now in this business of the digitalization over 25 years now. ELO exists over 25 years now. And in this case, we have a lot of awards for our solution win. And that shows that we deliver perfect technology, perfect solutions and products for our customer. Yeah, before we're talking about infrastructure, and it's good to know in which infrastructure I could use the ELO system. And you could use ELO out of the cloud, for example, that it's very fast available, because I don't have to wait that the internal IT staff have time to install a new server or the application. We could deliver per click out of the cloud. That is one advantage from the ELO out of the cloud. But when we have very dedicated solutions, for example, in the banking sector or in some building sectors, then it is very specific what we have to deliver. In this case, it's a good base, for example, to use one of our service provider, that our service provider make a perfect service and a very individual service on your needs. On your needs, they deliver what you need for the business is when you use in provider. Another case is it's a classic when you say, oh no, I want to have the data in my house because the data are very sensitive. I have a very sensitive in the chemical industry, for example, or iron production company. I want to have my data in-house. You could use ELO also in the in-house cloud. And that is very secure. Or when you have connection problems outside, you say, okay, my people working here on the place, and it is important that you have a fast speed of access for the data. That could be a reason why you use, for example, an own internal cloud. And what is important is you could combine all these platforms together. We have large organizations, and for example, the salespeople and the sales processes work in the cloud because it is overall available. but also sensitive data are in-house. They have an own IT center. So, and you could mix it, and it is all the same technology. That is also an important point from the ELO side. You could beginning, for example, in the cloud, when you're meaning, okay, I want to move in my in-house cloud because it's important that I have the data in-house, you could very flexible move your installation on your data from cloud or from the in-house cloud to the cloud. It is all possible when you want it. So, a short view on the ELO ECM suite. So it's important that you could work in all places and that you work very flexible. For example, in the office, you could take a workstation. When you're in a meeting, you have perhaps a tablet, or when you're on the way, more and more interesting to use your mobile phone, and you have all functionality available over all platforms. That is an important point. You could use what you want. Integration, we talked before, and we have a lot of integrations in, for example, the Microsoft world. It is important that we have integration in the Office 365. And you see one example that we integrate in Word, in Excel, in PowerPoint, and that we're working perfect together with these Microsoft solutions. Another point is also the integrations in Teams. We're working more and more with Teams in meetings, virtual meetings, and. And in this case, it is important that we have all information available when we make a meeting. So that we could best prepare our meetings with the ELO system, and that we have all access of the information, and especially and secure access. That means when we use then, for example, data in the Teams, in a team session, the data are very protected and secure because we have one central repository with this security levels what we could deliver. Also in the SharePoint, a lot of companies use the SharePoint. We have a perfect integration in the SharePoint so that we support the SharePoint for archiving the data, for example, for a long time, that we work perfect together with the SharePoint platform is also a big advantage. Another example for integration is the integration in other applications, how ERP systems, for example, SAP, Microsoft Business Central, whatever. We have interfaces that we could directly connect and transfer data between these both systems, but we have more. We could integrate it directly in the application. For example, in the ERP system, you see directly documents from the ELO system. You must not take a switch to the ELO system. You can see directly when you have opened your ERP system, oh, I have here no invoices what I have to book. You see it directly internal. Or when you use Salesforce, for example, you have direct all records on information in Salesforce available from the ELO side. So, and managing documents is one important point, but more important, and our target is that we're managing processes. So, that we're managing your business processes and that we take care that the business process is much more efficient and fast and mostly automated, so that we help you that the business process is very, very perfect working. So this is one part what we do, and we have a module for that. It's a workflow designer where we could design your business process, and that we could automate it also your business process, so that you have less without work. We will see later some examples. AI, we're talking about AI, and from the last year we have now ChatGPT. It's a hype that I think everybody from you have tried it. And for example, my graphic team was coming and say to me, oh, Mr. Mosbach, for the next Congress, we have some examples of covers for the new prospect. And then he presents 6 covers, it's only 4 here. And then after they told to me, this covers we have generated via AI all in seconds. So, and this is an example how you feel, okay, create covers very fast, where before in designer needs a lot of time. We have a photo shooting for the pictures and now you have the possibility to generate such kind of covers in seconds. That is crazy, but it is possible, and it is only one example what we could do with AI in the future in all sectors for text generation, for example, contracts and it save a lot, an enormous amount of time in our daily work. Yeah, AI, in principle, we're working over 10 years in AI. We have developed solutions you will see later based on AI technology. And what we do new is that we bring more and more intelligent assistant inside in our modules and in our programs, so that this intelligent assistants help you by your work. I give you some example for that. For example, you have a lot of incoming documents, emails, whatever, and we have a doc extractor, email room, who analyze the incoming documents, extract, for example, important data, and bring it in the right process, on the right place where you need this information. That means it is an intelligent assistant who makes the work for you to read all documents, to sort it, to classify it, and bring it on the right place. Yeah. What we also do a long time now is, for example, in the invoice sector, that we analyzing invoices. Is the invoice correct? It's all data available. So that means we make a contact check. On this contact check we make now for all kind of documents in the future. Another big advantage what our doc extractor, for example, do, it reads the invoices and pick the information for the bookkeep software, for example, the SAP system or every other ERP system, and they make it automated. You will see some customer later, they make thousands of invoices in seconds of seconds. So. And what is now new is this, that we integrated ChatGPT functionality, for example, in our contract module. That means when you have to analyze, you get a contract from outside, from a delivery company or whatever, and then we have internal now the functionality to say, please analyze this contract for me and show me what it's perhaps sensitive, where I have a deeper look on that. So, and this kind of AI technology we implemented now in our modules. So, one word I have here, note, AI is not perfect. So, that is also to know that you not think, okay, I use ChatGPT and all answer is it's right. No, that's not right. Yeah. So we have the situation that sometimes he gives all-time answer, but often the answer is bullshit. Why I say? Because you have to know he based on learning, on deep learning information, what they have analyzed. When they take a look in the internet, we have a lot of bullshit information who is not correct. So, and when they find such not correct information, then we have a problem. And for that, it's not running without ours themselves. We have to take a look on that and check it, and that it's also important for the future. But on a lot of places, it's helped very well, for example, in the contract area. And that makes the business for legal people, for example, in the future easier, because they have a checking of information and very fast response in the contract. That is now a small selection of our solutions, what we deliver on top of our enterprise content management system. Our target is intelligent information and process management. And what we have, for example, is this invoice management. When I'm working with SAP or another ERP system, we could use our ELO invoice system. Or we have a contract management solution, how I could perfect manage all my contracts that I have in-house, that I have in my company. Another point is we have a knowledge management or record management, especially for the government, so that you could perfect manage the daily work with this e-records when they use ELO system. some new solutions that you understand intelligent information management. It's more, and when we go this way to the more digitalization, then we need, for example, such intelligent solutions, how our e-learning platform. It is important that we take our stuff by our hand, and that we help them to learn the new technologies, the new ways what we are now decided for the future. And for that we have an intelligent learning platform, and say it's an intelligent teacher who help how could I train my staff internal, for example, in security aspects, so, and for regular audits or whatever. So I could take this system for training my staff in all kind of what I need. So ELO meeting is also a new development what we now have to realize. So in a platform how we could perfect organize our meetings for the future. So and here we have also AI technology implemented in the future. So when we have a meeting finish, that the ELO system generate automated the report from the meeting, and that generate also the task, for example, which task have which person until which time to deliver. So that means we have here a perfect platform for manage our meetings in the future much more successful. So now some examples that you have in few how, for example, our customer in the separate industries work with ELO. One example you see in the morning, the police in Switzerland, for example, work with our ELO system, have a SharePoint integration and use the record management for the daily work. Another example was this bankings, on where, for example, the Raiffeisen Bank archived over 100,000 documents every night in the ELO system. And important is that the Raiffeisen Bank working also on the counter. So that means the people who work on the counter have direct access of any kind of information when people is coming and say, hey, I have this problem, and with one click they have all information available from this customer when he stay on the counter. Another example was Bilfinger, and the Bilfinger works very strong with our ELO invoice, and the Bilfinger concern, for example, have every day 90,000 workflows of invoices, and 90,000 workflows you could only automated processed successful. You could not do it manually, that it is not possible. So in this case we have this AI component, our doc extractor, who do this work automated. 99,000 we process for the Bilfinger and Berger, and they save a lot of money, because in a lot of countries, when you pay in the right time, you could take sconto. And the Bilfinger concern, for example, save over 50 million every year with ELO when they work with our invoice solution. Another important point is our health sector. We have a lot of large hospitals who work with the ELO system in all areas in the administration, but for all directly by the doctor. They have the patient record and have directly access of all important information. And in the future, we will give some AI functionality additional. That is a very, very sensitive sector, and normally the sector costs a lot of money. And with ELO, we could reduce the response time from the doctors and from the whole administrations and so that we could deliver to the patients much more better service. And everybody know how long sometimes we have to wait when we come to an hospital. Then we have to wait in a queue and all this problems we want save for the future, and that is one what we have, for example, when the hospital works with ELO system in the hospital sector, so in the healthcare sector. So that's energy I'm talking before. We have large customers, how, for example, ESCOM here, and we have a lot to do in how we could bring the best service for the infrastructure and that the infrastructure have a better quality, and that that we have no load shedding in the future, and all this aspect we try to help the Escon company and make it more successful. Mining company I told before, and this is one example, for example, how the mining company Mine ID use the ELO system. They have built a portal because they have a very large legal companies, because they have a lot of legal processes to manage, and this legal process is mostly a very a big cost sector, and they have here a clear information structure, for example, from a legal process when they have to go to the court. And what we also have is implemented an intelligent analyzing of all kind of data. So, and we implemented now here also AI, that of a click you get the response what has happened with this legal process, what is running at the moment, where we stand. We could analyze all kind of documents and information and give him a summary or a direct view, so that the legal people could work much more successful in their business. And on the end, the cost side is an important point for the Mine ID. We have data analytics implemented so that they could directly analyze how it looks from the cost side when we have a legal processes. So our point is that we say digitalization must fit for your business. And that means it must mirror your business processes, because every business process is different. So every company have a different business processes, how they work, and it must be inspiring and motivate the employees. An important point is that we not say, oh, here's no solutions, and now you look how you work with this. We have to take our staff by the hand and motivate the employees that we get the best result on the end. And last but not least, the world is changing, but together we can successfully shape and master the challenges. So that is what I want to transfer to you in a fast time. I say thank you for your attention, and I hope you have some ideas now for your business. And for that we have separate presentation places now that you could discuss, and we stay also here from the ELO team for question and discussion, perhaps your own problems or challenges. What do you have? And we have a lot of experience, and so I would say we could help you to go this way to more success in the future with digitalization. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mosbach. That was an insightful presentation. I hope you, those who are seeing ELO for the first time, have at least been able to understand a bit in this short presentation what it can do. Thank you very much. It's been an honor hosting you.